Hey guys, welcome to part 3, the macronutrients series of videos, and in this video we're talking all things dietary fats. First off, body fat versus dietary fat. This is a source of confusion for some people, so we're going to clarify. The term fat can relate to both dietary fats, which we consume for energy, as well as stored body fat, known as adipose tissue. Adipose tissue can either be subcutaneous fat, this is the fat held under your skin on most of your body, and also visceral fat. This is the fat held around your vital organs, this is also the fat that we want to try and limit. Under normal conditions, healthy amounts of body fat provide feedback for hunger and diet to the brain via a hormone called leptin. Leptin is actually produced in your fat cells, and this helps to regulate energy balance and inhibit hunger. However, one of the main dangers with obesity is potentially having a decreased sensitivity to leptin. When leptin sensitivity is affected, this can result in an inability to detect satiety. So you're unable to detect when you're satisfied through your diet. So despite having high energy stores, so high levels of stored body fat, which would therefore mean high levels of leptin, we also combine that with a decreased sensitivity to leptin actually being able to do its job, and that can result in blunting the amount of satiety that you can detect. So your appetite satisfaction can't be properly regulated because the role that leptin is playing, it's not quite working optimally in the body. So decreased sensitivity to leptin, this can be why we see appetite not being regulated properly in obesity. Excess energy intake from any source of nutrients will be converted to stored body fat. So we should have learned this by now in terms of the energy balance. Any nutrient, if we consume too many calories from anything, this results in stored body fat. Now, this stored fat acts as a protective mechanism because not only does it provide you with energy when food isn't available, it also provides some insulation, and this can protect the body from heat and cold. So extremely lean individuals, there's a good chance they're going to feel the cold a lot more than somebody with more body fat. In dietary terms, although the human body can produce some of the fat it requires from other food ingredients, there are some essential fatty acids that we can't synthesize. So therefore we must consume these in the diet, and this is helpful for health. Okay, so we should never cut out dietary fat entirely, or we should never eat too little dietary fat. Dietary fat as a macronutrient is essential. So macro meaning large nutrient, so we need it in larger quantities. It's also essential. Okay, so we don't want to cut dietary fat out entirely. And macronutrients are not the same as food weight. So although we weigh food in grams, and although we have macronutrient targets in grams that we can work towards, these things are not the same. So a quick example here, if we look at almonds, which are a high fat food, fat isn't the only thing they contain. For example, you can see 100 grams to the left here of almonds, 576 calories, so it's also a very high calorie food. We also have some protein, we also have some carbs. Most of the calories, however, are coming from fats. If we had a 100 gram fat target each day, in order for us to fulfill that, if we were only eating almonds and trying to fulfill that target with this type of food, as an example, we would need 200 grams in food weight. Okay, so please do not get confused with food weights and macronutrient targets. These are separate things. Now let's talk more specifically about dietary fats. Dietary fats are sources of essential fatty acids, and these are an important dietary requirement. We need fats in the diet because vitamins A, D, E and K are all fat-soluble vitamins. We also have vitamins B and C, those are water-soluble vitamins, but A, D, E and K all fat-soluble. This means that they can only be digested, absorbed and transported around the body in conjunction with fats. Aside from assisting the body with this important uptake of vitamins, dietary fats also help us to produce hormones. They provide some structure to cell membranes and also maintain healthy cholesterol levels. The modern day diet does tend to see people under consuming healthier types of fat and over consuming less healthy types of fat. Although we do need to be careful to eat the right quantities of dietary fat, so we always want to think about having the healthiest diet that we can, it's not necessarily a helpful thing to label any particular food as good or bad, because this can create further problems with your overall adherence. The composition of all foods and fats we consume is made up of a unique ratio of different types of fats. It's this unique ratio which can make foods better or worse in terms of overall health and diet. And when we assess the overall diet, we can see sometimes that we just have too much of certain types of fats and not enough of other types of fats that contribute largely towards being healthy. Some quick examples here. Butter contains unsaturated fat, however it is mostly unsaturated fat. Olive oil contains saturated fat, however it is mostly unsaturated fat. So let's look quickly at some common cooking oils, and this is going to really give you a better idea of what we're talking about here. So you can see the dietary fat makeup of some common cooking oils expressed in these pie charts. For example, we just touched on butter and olive oil. We can see top left there, olive oil 74% monounsaturated. However, it is also made up of saturated and polyunsaturated. Coconut oil, another super common one. The majority of this fat is saturated. However, there's a small amount of the other two types of fats, mono and polyunsaturated. So we're starting to get the idea that these fats are made up of their own unique ratio. Okay, so when we understand this, we can start to tweak the diet based on what we think we may need more of for a healthy, balanced diet. Not only that, but common dietary trends such as the keto diet, which everybody has probably heard of by now, these have been somewhat misleading in the past to many people, because these types of diets, they can just say to you, okay, we need all of our calories coming from fats, but that's not really helpful in terms of health, because we need to make sure that we're getting the right amounts of fats and we're not ruling out some important nutrients, essential fatty acids. For example, with the keto diet, excess saturated fat in the diet can result in some health complications if we're having excessively high saturated fat. Yet the ketogenic diet leads people to just believe that any fat is okay, and therefore tend to reach for a lot of the types of foods that are very high in saturated fat, and then we have excessive amounts of saturated fat in the diet and not enough mono and polyunsaturated fats. So just remember that too much of anything can be bad for you. The danger is always in the dosage, and it's moderation that is key for a healthy diet. So we need balance, we need variety, we need moderation of some of the less healthy options, and that is how we work towards creating a healthier diet. So good versus bad fats. Our main types of dietary fats are saturated and unsaturated. Unsaturated fats can either be mono or polyunsaturated, and we also have trans unsaturated fats. As a general rule, the lowest recommendation for your total fat intake is going to be around 15% of your total energy intake. So of your total calories for the day, we want to make sure that we don't consume any less than 15% of those calories through dietary fats. There's no set upper limit, as this would be better based on your individual preferences, and also if you have any individual health requirements. However, when trying to create a well-balanced and healthy diet that doesn't rule out any major macronutrient types, it would probably be wise to have an upper limit that we are aware of. So for example, if we work towards no more than 35 to 40% of your total calories coming from dietary fats, this allows you to meet your other requirements for the other main macronutrients, so proteins and carbs. Considering that excessive saturated fat in the diet can cause some health complications in terms of cardiovascular disease and high cholesterol, we should probably also aim for a maximum of around about 10% of your total energy intake from saturated fats. Okay, this is not to say that this is an absolute and golden rule. However, this just affords you the variety for the other sources of fats that we need to also consider for a healthy diet. Trans fats should ideally be limited as much as possible, because generally these are what are found in more processed and packaged food products. Healthier types of fats. These are mostly going to be unsaturated in the form of mono and polyunsaturated fat types, and these can be very, very good at providing anti-inflammatory benefits. As such, there's no real recommended upper limit for consuming healthier types of fats, as most people tend to be already consuming less than optimal quantities of those types of fats. Saturated fat. This is usually solid at room temperature, and that's similar to trans fat, so food, processed packaged food, the fat that is found in those types of foods. Most animal fats are a mixture of saturated and unsaturated fats, and it's processed options that tend to be more saturated. Therefore, if we can prioritize leaner cuts of meat, then we can also reduce our saturated fat intake. Butter and coconut oil, very commonly used foods. These are high in saturated fat, as we saw on the common cooking oils image. If we also use reduced fat dairy products such as skimmed milk, light creams, reduced fat yogurts, we can therefore reduce total saturated fat intake and therefore calories as well, which is helpful. Processed foods, cakes, biscuits, pastries, ice cream, chocolate, sausages, salami, chorizo, bacon, these types of foods are generally higher in saturated fats. So can we make some swaps there? How much of your protein, for example, comes from those types of foods? Can we swap some of these things and go towards leaner cuts of meat? So in general, 10% of your total calorie intake from saturated fats is going to be the recommended upper limit, and this just allows you to be balanced with your intake. Foods containing saturated fat are not bad for you. It is only too much of anything, as we have already mentioned. Too much saturated fat can therefore result in negatively impacting your health if we start to be deficient in some of the other types that we also need. Monounsaturated fats. These are things such as oils, and they're generally liquid at room temperature. Okay, and these are thought to be healthier for us, similar to polyunsaturated fats. Monounsaturated fats are also found in animal products such as red meat and chicken skin. Whole milk products also, most nuts, great source of monounsaturated fat, and also high fat fruits such as olives and avocados. Olive oil, as we've already seen, is about 75% monounsaturated fat, with a small amount of the other fats. Monounsaturated fats have been found to lower the incidence of insulin resistance, which is a health complication associated with diabetes, and they may also help to reduce bad cholesterol, which can lower your risk of heart disease and stroke. There's no recommended upper limit for this type of fat, but your total fat intake should be relative to your goal, your activity levels, your dietary preferences. So if we can choose more unsaturated fat types than saturated, that would probably be a helpful push in the right direction for your diet and your health. Fat is the most calorie dense macronutrient, therefore carefully monitoring your intake of higher fat foods is likely to be very helpful when we look at managing your overall calorie intake. Now, polyunsaturated fats, these are thought to be some of the most healthy fats for us, and this is because they are powerful anti-inflammatory types of foods. Okay, omega-3, everybody's heard of this. Omega-3 rich foods can help to balance out some of the pro-inflammatory omega-6 rich foods in the diet, which tend to be more of the saturated fats, and most people don't consume enough unsaturated fats. Polyunsaturated fats are found in foods such as nuts, seeds, fish, especially oily fish, seed oils, oysters, and eating foods such as walnuts, pine nuts, flax seeds, sesame, sunflower, pumpkin seeds are great options for you to include in your diet. We can cook and use these in the diet in a variety of ways. So very, very healthy types of foods to have in your diet, which a lot of people don't consume enough of. Fatty types of fish such as salmon, herring, sardines are very, very rich in polyunsaturated fat and should ideally be consumed 2 to 3 times per week. However, we just need to remember that we can still eat too much healthy fat, so portions are important. There is no recommended upper limit for this type of fat again, but your total fat intake needs to be relative to you and your goals, as we just mentioned with monounsaturated fats. Try to choose more unsaturated fat types if you know that you are predominantly eating more saturated types of fats. So again, fat is the most calorie dense macronutrient, and if we can get more of a grip on where our fat intake is coming from, this is probably going to be helpful for managing your calories. In terms of your requirements, we've touched on the fact that 15% of your total calorie intake should be your minimum limit for dietary fat. We can also calculate this through using your body weight. Okay, so 0.5 to 1 gram of fat per kilogram of body weight. Some simple examples down here. If we were to weigh 100 kilograms in terms of total body weight, and we shoot for the lower end of that scale, 0.5 times 100 gives you 50 grams of dietary fat as your daily target. If we were 80 kilograms and we shot for the middle range there, 0.7 times 80, 56 grams of dietary fat each day. 60 kilograms, if we're aiming for the upper end, 60 grams of dietary fat. Okay, these are just examples that this is a general idea of the type of range that we're looking to fall in. Dietary fat is a large source of energy, so when striving for fat loss, consuming a high fat diet results in less remaining calories for carbohydrates. Okay, so because this is a source of energy, we want to try and balance that. If we like to eat carbohydrates, we want to try and take a moderate approach so that we can include both. Other considerations for dietary fat. Some high fat foods are very, very easy to overconsume. For example, dietary fats give traditional recipes a very authentic taste. If we think of your favorite restaurant and takeaway meals, curry, for example, it tastes amazing because of the fat. Things like coconut milk and butter ghee, this gives it a very rich, authentic taste. So used a lot in traditional recipes. Other examples such as pasta, for example, rich and satisfying, mostly due to the fat content. Things like olive oil and cheeses used in sauces and toppings on meals such as pasta make it very authentic, but also come at the cost of extra calories. So we have to be mindful of that. Carbs do often get slated as being the cause of obesity, but in reality, when we look at the types of processed foods that people overconsume, they are a combination of both fats and carbs. And when we look specifically at the types of foods, it's often the fats are saturated fats and the carbs are simple sugars. So the more we understand about macronutrients and calories in the foods that we eat, and in particular the foods that we can get caught out with eating too much of, the more you understand that, the better chance you have of eating these types of foods in moderation, because we become more aware and therefore we can get closer to reaching your goals. Dietary fat also slows your gastric emptying. So this means that high fat meals can feel very heavy and leave you full for a long time. And also kind of makes sense when we remember that fats are the highest in calories. So consuming a high fat meal before training or before bed, for example, that could potentially make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. The same thing applies to other foods that are harder for the body to digest. So for example, eating a steak before bed or before you are going to the gym, your body's going to be working quite hard to break that down and digest it. And this could potentially make you a little bit more uncomfortable. If you don't include oily fish in your diet 2 to 3 times per week, then it's likely that you could have a deficiency in DHA and EPA. These are the two very, very important fatty acids that your body can't synthesize, not in sufficient quantities anyway. So we need to consume a high quality fish oil supplement. This is definitely recommended. I personally don't eat fish at all because I don't like it. However, it is therefore very, very important for me to make sure that I'm not creating a deficiency that could impact my health. So I am very consistent with consuming a high quality fish oil supplement, and I don't mind paying a little bit more to make sure that I get a good quality supplement, because I know that I'm not obtaining this from whole foods that would probably benefit me. Okay, this is more of a personal preference thing for me, but again, just to reinforce the importance that just because we don't like something doesn't mean that we can't make up any shortfalls through a supplement potentially. So this is how we want to start to think, avoiding deficiencies. Okay, fat composition in common foods. Now, the foods listed here, many of you will be already consuming these foods, but you may not have already been aware that the actual fat profile of those foods is some makeup, a unique makeup of different types of fats. At the top we can see the colours: saturated in red, monounsaturated in that purpley colour, and polyunsaturated in green. Okay, if we look at oils, for example, we've just shown you some examples of that. Oils, dairy products, nuts, sweets and baked goods, meats, and fats added during cooking or at the table. We've got these categories here, and what we can clearly see is that every single food has a unique makeup of the different types of dietary fats. So we can look at this and we can try to think about the makeup of our diet. Which fats are we currently consuming more of, or which fats could we potentially make some swaps and eat more of? So for example, the nuts section, this would be a great section to look at and say, out of these foods, almonds, cashews, macadamia, flax seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, for example, could we potentially add some of these foods in place of some of the other foods? For example, oils or dairy products, or even sweets and baked goods. Could we potentially make some swaps so that we are not always consuming a diet which is rich in saturated fat? Could we make some swaps so that we get a little bit more in terms of monounsaturated and polyunsaturated? So if you want to screenshot this, feel free to screenshot this and have a closer look. But that is a very useful image to get your head around, just to understand how these foods are all unique in their fat profile. Okay, quick fire summary on dietary fats. Dietary fat and your body fat provide energy. Okay, too much of either is not healthy. So too much dietary fat in the diet, we're probably going to have a hard time regulating calories. Too much body fat in your body. We talked about potentially having some resistance to leptin, which is an important hormone that helps you regulate your satisfaction and your energy balance. So these are both things that we want to try and avoid. Your body can produce some of the fats you need, but not all. This is why fats are essential in the diet. Most high fat foods also contain other macronutrients. the example we looked at right at the start was 100 grams of almonds is not the same as 100 grams of fat. Dietary fat is 9 calories per gram. This makes it the easiest macronutrient to overconsume in terms of calories. Okay, so if we can be more aware of the quantities that we are consuming in terms of cooking oils, butter, higher fat foods and sauces such as creamy foods and sauces, these are good opportunities to regulate the overall quantity of fat that you consume when we become more aware of that. Without fat in the diet, you can't use vitamins A, D, E and K properly because they are fat soluble vitamins. This means we need fat in the body to be able to use these vitamins. Most people are eating too much saturated fat and not enough mono and polyunsaturated fat. So can we look at potentially swapping some of the types of foods that we consume? All fats are made up of all fats. Every food has a unique makeup of the macros and fats. So we're showing you plenty of examples there to understand that point. Your minimum fat intake should be around about 15% of your total daily calorie intake. Okay, so not really any specific upper limit. Too much fat in the diet reduces your available calories for carbs and protein. So although there's no specific set upper limit, we can just take a more balanced approach if we try and limit your fat intake to 40% at most. And that allows you, if we were looking at percentage terms, that would allow you 30% for protein, 30% for carbs, so we can take a balanced approach with the diet. So 40% sensible upper limit. No more than 10% of your total calorie intake should be from saturated fats. Okay, this is not to say that you can't consume more of that. It is just to indicate that when we try to make some swaps and limit saturated fat, this opens up the opportunity for you to get other types of healthy fats into your diet because we're not already over consuming fat through saturated fat. Saturated fat is typically found in more processed products such as deli meats and snacks. And if we think about the commonly used cooking fats, cooking oils, butter and coconut oil are very commonly used. Be aware that these are mostly saturated fat, and could we make some swaps? So for example, extra virgin olive oil, using that now and again as an alternative source would be a great way to get more monounsaturated fats in your diet. Monounsaturated fats are healthier and can lower risk of cardiovascular diseases and strokes. Monounsaturated fats are commonly found in nuts, olives, olive oil, avocados and whole milk products. Polyunsaturated fats are good for you. They are very, very good for you. If you don't get enough of this, then use a quality supplement. Try to think about this in terms of quite often you get what you pay for. So if we have very low quality fish oil supplements, this is generally not going to give you the stuff that you actually need. The main reason you are taking that supplement would be to make up for a shortfall. What we tend to see in low quality supplements is that they don't actually give you the EPA and the DHA that you need. Those are the essential fatty acids that we probably want a bit more of. So when we have a cheap fish oil supplement, this doesn't have enough of that stuff in it. Okay, so quality does matter even for supplements. And lastly, fat makes food taste good. It also slows down that process of gastric emptying, so we have to think a little bit more in terms of meal timing, and that might be familiar if you've had a high fat meal and gone to bed and just felt a bit uncomfortable. This is because fat in the diet is going to slow down that process of everything passing through. Okay, so reduce high fat meals before training and bed. That would probably be sensible to make you more comfortable, and not only that, but perform better in the gym. So in summary, daily fat goal 15 to 40%, or we can also calculate this in terms of grams, okay, and your fat per kilogram of body weight. So 0.5 to 1 gram of fat per kilogram of body weight is a simple calculation for you to use. Okay, that is it for the dietary fats section. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, which is going to be all about carbohydrates.